Today, we're diving into a special roster review for one of our listeners who won this opportunity in our 500 subscriber celebration giveaway. We'll break down their team from top to bottom, highlight strengths, expose weaknesses, and give our best advice for building a true contender. Whether you're rebuilding, retooling, or chasing a title, you'll pick up tricks you can use in your own leagues. Let's get into it. And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. Justin, joined as always by my co hosts David and JP. And by as always, I mean for the first time in a second, we have all three together. Busy summer for all of us. Getting close to the season. Curious how you two are feeling about the upcoming season, David and JP.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. It's time. We got redraft leagues, draft dates setting up. Camp's here, preseason is here. I'm excited. I can't wait.
Yeah, I've got a lot more contenders this year. Last year, I actually only had one contending roster, so I've got most of my teams are contending now. So yeah, it's a lot more exciting now than when you're rebuilding most of the time.
Yeah, my rose colored glasses tell me that 13 of my 16 Dynasty teams are contending. I think about 8 of them are serious. We'll see how the season goes, but I'm pretty excited for it's going to be a fun year for sure. All right, so we are going to be reviewing a roster from friend of the show, listener league member who won the giveaway we did. One of our two winners. We're reaching out to get the other one going as well. Kyle Kluda, aka Fields of Doubts. Huge shout and thank you to Kyle for being an early subscriber, listening throughout, and winning our award, as well as he's always been one who has given us feedback on our episodes, hits me up in the DMs about this, that, and the other thing. Helped inspire some of our better graphics actually by making fun of us a little bit in a lighthearted way. So thanks, Kyle. Excited to be looking at your roster. We're going to be giving away more opportunities for this. So if you'd like to possibly get your own roster on this in the future, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. Hit that like button as well while you're at it. Before we bring up the roster, JP, can you start out by giving us a little bit of context about this league?
Yeah, so this is a league where the startup was just a month ago. It's a lineup league, so it's not best ball. You're going to set your lineup every single week, and it is a 12 team start 10 league with 6 point passing touchdown, full PPR, and one tight end premium with also a 0.15 points per carry.
Definitely a few wrinkles more than you see in just the average league. We're going to touch on them one at a time. First, looking at one tight end premium. JP, what does that mean to you specifically when you see a league with that?
Yeah, I think most league managers they do adjust for a tight end premium. I mean, you should also, but I don't think they do enough for a full one tight end premium format because elite tight ends they're honestly more valuable than elite wide receivers unless you're looking at a huge season like we saw from Jamar Chase. You look at Trey McBride and Brock Bowers last year. Honestly, I think they're in the conversation to be taken ahead of Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb in this kind of format because honestly they outscored those guys last year. McBride, he scored more than any wide receiver in points per game in that format other than Jamar Chase, and that's in a season where he only had 3 total touchdowns. So he really could be a guy that could be scoring 23 plus fantasy points per game like we saw from Jamar Chase last year. So I'm saying take advantage of that tight end premium if the league is not properly valuing those tight ends.
Yeah, not only at the top where these elite tight ends become, scoring with elite wide receivers, but now I care about any tight end that's actually out there running routes. You get 2 catches for 20 yards and a touchdown. All of a sudden, you have a decent game. It's startable. It's pretty much flex worthy in most formats. This being a 12 by 10, I wouldn't call it deep, but it's also not exactly shallow. So I do think you'll end up starting a lot of those like Hunter Henrys, if Mike Gesicki or Noah Fant, if one of those guys separates that, that level of player. So I care about rostering more of them too. If there's no tight end premium or just a light tight end premium, I just want like a hammer and maybe a guy behind him or two. In this kind of format, I'll take some shots on some guys. I'll give me an Oronde Gadsden or one of these other rookie tight ends. Let me take a shot on them and hope they hit and can actually change something. So not just at the top, but at the bottom too. I think a full tight end premium does impact things pretty largely.
100% huge difference between even a 1.5 tight end premium and this 2 tight end premium, like you're saying there. Zach Ertz won me championships in 2 tight end premium leagues, right? Like, names that are not sexy in my flex spot won me money in multiple leagues. I have 2 different leagues where Zach Ertz was in playoff rosters. You're gonna see ugly names like that this year, so I think we might touch on some of that when we're looking at ways to improve this roster if we decide to go for contending. Last scoring wrinkle we're gonna talk on, 0.15 PPC. To me, when I see this number, my initial thought is it's high enough to get people really interested, but probably not high enough to matter as much as it changes people's perspectives. I think people like RBs, and I think people look for an excuse to want RBs more. And I think when we look at this 0.15 PPC on 20 carries, we're looking at 3 points per game, right? It's not nothing, but it's not changing the world. And I think it's kind of, if it's going to be changing the league market, I kind of like to fade RB a little bit more and just go old and crusty. How do you feel about this, David?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the league because I think PPC it's growing in popularity, but it's still not to the point where I think everybody thinks about it the same way. Like with PPR, at this point, everybody just we know how to factor that in. We all know how to deal with that in our rankings, so we know how other people are probably going to deal with it. So I've been in some PPC leagues where people just don't care. Like we were just talking about one before we started recording. There's a league all three of us are in. I forgot there was a PPC in it because nobody like the market doesn't suggest that even. Then I did a best ball startup where it is a 0.25, which is definitely a significant difference. So it is a meaningful difference. But like Bucky Irving went like 205 or something in the startup. In the startup, it's like it just really depends on the league. Don't let it impact you too much. It does matter, but I think probably more times than not, you're going to just find great wide receiver value because some people are going to reach on running back, especially early on. But like if the value starts to fall and people don't care, like don't be afraid to start mopping up the value there too. So it really depends on the league at a 0.15 because it's not quite enough for like you have to consider it, but it's still it's there. It does impact things a little bit.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more of a tiebreaker. It's not like if it's 0.25, then yeah, it's going to matter more for me. But I think you look at that point per carry and you're like, you look at it with rose colored glasses, but really only four guys average over 18 carries a game. So it's realistically, it's going to be like a couple points per game. And, running backs, they're just riskier in general. So tiebreaker for me, but yeah, it's just not enough to move the needle.
Yeah, for me, I think it's like when we're looking at tier one RBs and tier two wide receivers, tier two RBs and tier three wide receivers. It, where I might prefer the wide receiver in a vacuum, I think I'm more likely to sometimes go RB with the points per carry when they're pretty much equal in startup value. But I would always go wide receiver. I think it just makes it so when it's a toss up, I'm more likely to go RB than it changes my perspective, if that makes sense. All right. So I think we've all talked a little bit about how PPC changes our opinions. Definitely talked about tight end premium. Of course, PPR, we're not even going to bother really touching on. It's such a standard format. People who catch the ball, they matter. So now, with that being said, David, for some team context and visualization, let's pull up Dynasty Daddy. For those watching on YouTube, please ignore the fact that a Google algorithm thinks I need Depends commercials.
That's funny. So we did ask for some input from Kyle. I think that's important to know where his head's at before we start tearing things down or trying to build things up. When you look at the team, you'll see that receiver is the biggest strength by far. Weakness is running back. He also said quarterback. I don't know if I'd call that a weakness, but I get where he's coming from. His long term goal is to build around his wide receiver core. Short term goals, he either needs to buy a running back to compete or sell some vets and go the other direction. Basically, short term goals, pick a direction. Little team context there. Here are the players on the team if you are not reading. Important quarterbacks: Kyler Murray, Jordan Love. Running backs, we got David Montgomery, Joe Mixon, Tank Bigsby, and Tony Pollard. Now here's the fun wide receivers: Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Amon Ra, Jay Hassan, Chris Godwin, Juwan Jennings, and then some roster cloggers, which we will talk about shortly. Tight end, TJ Hawkinson matters for sure in this format. I think Goddard and Otten kind of matter as well. And then the pick situation, not great. We have our third and 26 and our second and third and 27. I'm hoping the 28 picks, and they're just not shown. I think that's how Dynasty Daddy does it, but I assume he has all his 28 picks.
He better have his 28.
Yeah, he better. I assume so. Like, who's trading 28 picks right now? If they're coming your way, great, take them, sure, whatever. But I wouldn't trade them away yet. Like I said, I was saying though, I kind of agree with his assessment about his wide receivers. It's a great core to build around. I do think we have too many roster cloggers on there. We'll talk about some different ways to fix that. We'd rather have the end of the bench players be at running back, quarterback, or even in this format, tight end, wide receiver, especially with that wide receiver core though. Probably the last place we want to have these guys. Like, what's it going to take for Jalen Polk to hit your lineup? How many things have to go right before that happens? So that's something we'll want to work on. Rough pick situation, like I said. And then another thing, I'm really worried about Joe Mixon, Chris Godwin. If those two guys were healthy going into this season, I'd feel a lot different about this team. I don't know about you guys, but
Thanks, David, for sharing all that. Definitely would love to see those picks being available. With those not being there, it definitely puts the onus, right? If he owns his picks, he can wait and see. Wait till week 3, then make a decision. But I do think he needs to make a decision. We obviously need to figure out what we all think that decision should be. JP, what are your assessments on the strengths, weaknesses of this roster and these players specifically?
Yeah, I mean the wide receivers are so good that they could carry you into the playoffs like almost single handedly, especially in a start 10. I mean, TJ Hawkinson's going to score a lot of points, like I talked about with the full tight end premium. And I do like Dallas Goddard because when we've seen when either AJ Brown or Devontae Smith is out, he gets targeted a lot. I know he had a 30-point game last year, and a full tight end premium, it would have been even more. So I do like the way it is set up because it seems like running back was overvalued. I think that if if you want to have more upside in the playoffs, because I think he's probably going to be locked into the playoffs. We'll just see what we decide which direction we go. But I think some guys you could swing on because quarterback, if we look there, I think you could maybe see if you could acquire a guy like Jalen Milrow. He'll give you some upside in that fantasy playoff time point, maybe even Jackson Dart. Those guys are a little bit expensive, but I do think having the receivers, like this quality wide receiver, you have the option all season long to tier down to like an older wide receiver or even a slightly lesser wide receiver if you want to get quarterback or running back injection. I think even you could look at the fantasy playoff upside of a guy like Bashal Tutin, guys like that, maybe Cam Scatabo, or if somebody like gets an injury, you could buy, a Charbonnet if Walker goes down, maybe a Jordan Mason if Aaron Jones goes down. So I think that this team probably is set up pretty good to make the playoffs, but I just think you want some more upside in that fantasy playoff time frame if we do contend.
Yeah, and for me, when I look at this roster, simplest thing David alluded to earlier, our general philosophy about this type of a league is pick up other players than wide receivers. Just going and taking a look at the best players available at each position down here. Would love to drop a roster clogger RB for Jake Browning 100%. At running back, I'd rather take Ty Goodson from the Indianapolis Colts, see what he's doing week 1 or 2. I might even rather have Rasheen Lee, Frank Gore than these wide receivers, and just look at who else is available at running back as well. Any running back on a decent offense we're potentially interested in. Tight ends, I would personally rather have Cade Stover. I'd personally rather have probably even like I don't know about Will Disley, Luke Musgrave, but the wide receivers he have, if I go back up to the roster, I have no interest in having Jalen Naylor, Jalen Polk, Jalen Tolbert. I don't want Jalen Lane. Is he doing a Jalen like thing? Is he just is it a bit? Is it a bit, guys? No, but I'm smashing getting rid of those. Right here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm trying to liquidate Roman Wilson. I'm trying to pick something up for him. I'd take a 4th if they're available in this league. sell him and any of these other wide receivers for a third if I had to. So I'd love to get him off the roster, but I think I'd struggle to cut him just because I think when you cut these other 6 guys, which I would cut these other 6 guys for any running back, any quarterback, because those are the positions that A, you want backups on, and B, that he needs to fill. So it's not even about the players, it's just about getting into the right construction, and I already would feel a lot better about the team. Unfortunately, right after a startup, it's usually a little bit difficult to do that. I think throughout the course of the season, he's gonna have to pay attention to when somebody who shouldn't drop a backup quarterback does because something happens, right? And a backup running back, he's gonna have to monitor, in my opinion, the waiver wire all season to even if he makes moves to drop these guys for running backs or quarterbacks now, 'cause I didn't see that many good ones available. I think he's gonna need to be on the wire looking for better ones available at a later time.
Yeah, I mean Jake Browning really stands out. This time last year, we were talking about him being one of the best backups in the league. Some people were being a little hot takey, saying he could be like a starter on another team. But I mean, they got the weapons there. He's surrounded by weapons, and out of the 7 games he started last year, he had over 20 points in 5 of those 7. So yeah, he would be my number one pick for sure.
Definitely jumped out as an easy pickup for one of those wide receivers. So he had a couple questions for us now. First, is this team good enough as is to get hot in the playoffs, or do I need to make moves? And I'm gonna have both of you answer with just one word, then I'll ask you why. I'll also answer with one word last. Think about it. Don't change it no matter what. David first.
Probably.
Very strong answer. JP second.
Yeah, I think so.
I say yes as well. Injuries are the question. And the flexibility, of course, I while I yes, I could see it happening, I don't think I want to really I mean, certainly as is as is, in my opinion, with the moves I suggested that are free, right? Just change the roster construction as is what I would say. So no trades, right? Simple stuff you can do. But even though I think it is, and I agree with David's probably, I need to make some moves anyways. Do you agree as well? I'll go JP first since you said you do believe it could be. You're still looking to do something with it, correct?
Yeah, I probably want a little bit more upside for the playoffs because I see the starter rank for him is sixth, so I'm assuming the other teams are pretty good above him as well, maybe pretty similar. But I do think Godwin does offer upside for that later portion as well because of how good he was last year, and if he's fully healthy by week 10 on, also maybe there's a chance that Evans or Buka could get hurt. Maybe even Evans starts to slow down. So I still would look to probably make a move, but yeah, I still think that he does have a pretty solid chance right now.
I think you should always be trying to make moves on every dynasty team.
I mean, you're not wrong, David. You should always be trying to make moves, but there's teams where it's not you're trying to make moves, it's you're losing if you don't make moves. Do you feel like this is that type of a situation?
I forget who said it, but I love. I'm gonna have to kind of uh, ad lib on this quote, but it was basically every time somebody else makes a trade in your league that you're not a part of, at least one team is closer to a championship than they were previously, which is always a bad thing for you.
I'm gonna go ahead and push back a little bit on that. At least summer months, I think there are definitely summer month trades where everyone loses, I think. But
I mean, sure, but it's not a hard rule, but a general good thought, which just it motivates me to be active when other people are active in my leagues.
I hear you. All right, getting back to Fields of Doubt's team here, Kyle's team. He says, second question, mostly I avoided overdrafting, overpaying for RB. The league was hot for RBs in the startup with a couple who wanted to punt at what I thought was pretty reasonable prices. If I do try to buy, should it be a hammer for an RB hammer? So he's talking about his wide receivers for an RB hammer, or use other pieces to try and buy some depth RBs that could pop in season. He says, tried to get MHJ plus Achan for neighbors. That was a no go. Connor Bucky and a second for Amon Ross St. Brown. I turned it down. So I think we're going to probably talk and answer a little bit about those questions as we walk through the specific moves. So I don't want to spend a lot of times on those two questions, but keeping that in mind, I do want to just ask one thing on that for you guys. We all you agree, we talked about it beforehand, so I'm going to speak for both of you. We need to do something else at RB. If Mixon was healthy and he had just these three, I think we'd feel good enough going into the season. But with how Mixon is, we need to do something at RB. Are you guys more interested in hammer hunting, getting a proven guy that's younger, or a 1 year rental?
I think that just depends on what direction we decide to go. And I think this team is so in the middle right now, especially without your own control, without your picks. I think we kind of need to walk through both directions for me to pick which one's my favorite. I think I know which way I want to go, but I'm very curious to see how you guys, what your input is, and I could see being convinced to go the other direction by the end of this conversation. So it's hard to answer what kind of running back I want until I know what direction I want to go and how badly I want that running back, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm aiming for a real top of the market hammer running back. I'm thinking more so a guy who could be an RB1. I think I might be looking to tier off maybe JSN, because if Chris Godwin comes back and he's balling, and you also have JSN in your flex and Godwin, I also want to have the flexibility to plug in a guy like Dallas Goddard if AJ Brown's out and he's getting targeted a lot, because then in a two tight end premium, he's gonna be really valuable as well. But so, I mean, I don't know if maybe a JSN to get like a Harvey and a first, maybe a third on top, and give some flexibility in the season. Harvey also offers some upside at the end of the season for the playoffs if he captures that 65% of the workload, with that offense maybe taken off. Maybe I'm looking at Travion Henderson, Kenneth Walker, somebody in that range is kind of what I'm thinking about tearing off of JSN for.
Yeah, definitely hear you on those answers. Probably more likely to go cheap and dumpster diving here based off what he said about the market economy on where people drafted them being this close to the startup draft. People still have so much of that sunk cost fallacy. If they overdrafted them, I think I'm going to try to go cheaper. It's really just a bummer he already has Tony Pollard because he'd be a great target. But I'll talk more about other interesting targets later on. First, let's go ahead and David, if we're looking for a rebuild, what are the types of moves we're looking to make from a roster construction and process perspective?
Well, the big one, and I don't know if this qualifies under process or players' perspective, or probably just both, really just both. If we're trying to rebuild, we got to get control of our first back. It's not really worth it, especially with a team like this that could compete. It's not worth tearing down if you don't have that control. So when you get our first back, Justin, if you want to go find BV Antonov, the team, he's the guy who has control of it. So I think we need to open that up to kind of look at his roster and see what maybe we can do with it. There's not a whole lot that jumps out to me. Basically, the path that I think makes the most sense is trying to tear down from JSN to Devonta Smith, George Pickens, or Matthew Golden. Get your first back. It almost feels a little light, so maybe you can get a little more on there. Maybe not for Devonta Smith, maybe for Golden, but I think at the end of the day, if you feel comfortable going into a rebuild, that's probably the path to get it back. I don't know. Do you guys think that trade's fair? Do we need to add to it? Do we need to rearrange some things?
I think a direction I might look to go here, just based off of startup ADP round, might be something along the lines of moving in the quarterback range, either or, honestly, Love or Murray, whoever he's highest on, for Dak Prescott. And I'm wondering if we could make like a JSN to Devonta Smith trade. Throw on my first back and see if I can get a little bit more too. Maybe a Travis Etienne or something like that, who's a little bit older. Because when I look at Dak Prescott, Travis Etienne, and Devonta Smith, I'm not sure how well they fit his rebuilding timeline. I think you might be able to sell like a big trade here where I give younger, sexier pieces and I get back pieces that I still like and my first and the flexibility. So that's just it's big. You can take just some parts of those, but I'd start having a conversation with him about those specific pieces because they don't make as much sense on his roster. and think about the quarterback that might be younger and more interesting for him than Dak, who he probably just took as a value, hoping to trade and wants to trade, right? So just some thought.
Yeah, I think even another option that comes to my mind is when you look at Amon Ra, he's not old, but next year, he's going to start be getting to that old-ish wide receiver range. So maybe you can look for like an Amon Ra for Cam Ward and your first back, something along the lines of that. And even if you want to do it, just get really young all at once, maybe you can even throw in that JSN for Pickens and an extra first on top. Some sort of big deal you might be able to do because I mean, Amon Ra, Neighbors, and BTJ is going to score a lot of points. So Amon Ra would be the one I'm looking to move off of just based off of age. So how does that kind of sound to you guys?
My pushback there would be this team doesn't really look like it wants to acquire an Amon Ra. You know, they've got three firsts this year, a bunch of extra seconds and thirds. Actually, oddly, no extra 27 capital, but I think it's going to take some talking with this person to get your first back because clearly they're trying to hold on to their first. But if you're offering a young piece like JSN, maybe BTJ, maybe he likes Amon Ra, who's still young enough that like I'm not gonna not bring him up in the conversation. It's just this one's a little tricky getting this 26 first back. I think when we transition to talking about the 27 first, that team has a little bit more opportunity. Unfortunately, it's an extra year out, so that's a harder needle to thread.
And those are golden geese, those picks, right? 27 picks. Also just harder to acquire in general. So I think we've talked a little bit about the 26 first, the moves we might make. It's a tough one to do. It's hard to go. Moving on to 27, that is going to be
High TT law.
a trust the process team as well, a fraud and a trust the process. Not teams you want to try to get first round picks from, not teams that are looking to move them, which we'll talk a little bit more about how we think that's reasonable is, but let's assume it's possible. David, walk me through some of your thoughts.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more in the receiver area that I like that I think works for the rebuild because this guy's clearly not trying to acquire old players. So a rebuilder to rebuilder trade is kind of hard to work out, but I think we got some options here. I think we might be able to do, and again, Amon Ra if you can in place of BTJ here. I'd much rather move Amon Ra, but I think market value they're pretty close. So BTJ for Tet in your 27 first. Maybe you can get a smidge more, but I think Tet's looking great in camp. 27 class is hyped. I think that might be about the ceiling. And then if you can get Egbuka in a first for JSN, I think that's a smash in pretty much any format at this point. Egbuka's like the hype's taken off. So I feel very comfortable about his floor. I don't think he's going to be a huge miss. He might not hit the levels that JSN would hit, but you're getting that 27 first as insurance. So those are just two things I would consider. You're still staying young at receiver in both of these deals, and you're getting your 27 first back.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not getting my 26 first back, I'm not super interested in acquiring Igbuka in my 27 first, just because I feel like I'm really shooting myself. Unless I can turn around and turn Igbuka into a veteran wide receiver in that range. Honestly, if I could flip him for Devonta Smith in that situation, I might be interested in doing that with the team that has my 26 first, or trying to turn Igbuka into my 26 first. Like, I would just be looking for a next move there personally, just not owning my 26 first and not wanting to tank this year. But I like the process and the price and the idea as long as I have a plan in mind.
This team actually has two of the players that I mentioned as like late season upside swings. I mean, they have both Facial Tootin and Milrow. Knowing that they're rebuilding, like maybe I could get those players off their team. I mean, they're young and they're rookies, obviously, but I don't have a whole lot in the way of picks, but maybe I can make some sort of pivot. But yeah, that stands out because this team, if even if these players they go up in value, they have a better role, they probably will be looking to move those players.
Don't disagree at all there. That I would love to try to pry some players along those veins off this team. Don't even hate Josh Downs as some sort of target coming back to me as a guy that if I could get Downs back in that deal, add something to get Downs back, I would just like the additional flexibility that just another startable wide receiver would give me. I do think it's going to be difficult to get these firsts. I think we're going to see some problems in getting them. But assuming we're able to do this, assuming we're able to make these trades, what are the next moves at that point? We managed to get these first with some of these tear down options. What's next?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Even if you only get your 26 first back, I'm probably looking to make some of these moves. If you get both back, definitely looking to retool. It starts with those running backs: David Montgomery, Joe Mixon, Tony Pollard, Tank Bigsby. All of them could lose all of their value by this time next year. So, I'm flexible on prices, but I think roughly a second and a third for Montgomery or Mixon if he is healthy. If he's not healthy, you might just have to eat it until he is. I'm personally not buying him for anything right now. I mean, sure, you want to give him to me for a third, fine, let's do it, but that's not reasonable. So you might have to hold on to him. That's play by ear, but if he gets back on the field and looks like he's going to be the guy, I think you might be able to get a second and third. Pollard, Tank Bigsby, if you can get a second. Bigsby, you might have to throw something in on. It just depends. But I'm trying to get rid of all of them. Just about anything you can get for Najee Harris. A few trade partners, potential trade partners that stood out to me while I was looking through things. Prismatic Porter, he has Quinshon Judkins. It looked like he was kind of relying on for some points from his running back room this year. That's very uncertain, so he might be willing to spend a second to shore up that position. The dude abides, same situation where he only has two good running backs, but not much depth. And G Nuts looks like he's trying to compete, but he does not have much RB depth as well. So any of those three teams, I would just send out some of these offers, just send them to all three of them, see what happens. Maybe mention that you're trying to sell any of these running backs. If we do have our first back, also want to sell Chris Godwin, TJ Hawkinson, Kyler Murray personally, but mostly focusing on moving the older running backs.
Yeah, you kind of just mentioned real quickly one of the things I was kind of eyeing. I think there's just a couple of players after I made those moves, if I'm able to make any of them. I think in season you could wait for Dallas Goddard to have a big week or an injury to one of the receivers, then move him in season. I think you could even potentially do the same for Kyler if a quarterback around the league gets hurt. You can move Kyler for their quarterback plus, or maybe you can even just move Kyler for Cam Ward if you feel better about that because rookie quarterbacks they hold value year over year. Kyler Murray, the vibes around him are not that great. So, I mean, I think he's going to be a starter this year for sure, probably next year, but I don't think it's out of the question that he could start to lose value. So I think that's another couple of moves you could be eyeing.
Yeah, I guess I'm actually a little bit of a Kyler believer there. I think he's going to be fine for several more years. I think he'll get a second contract. He's not old like Russ was when he kind of flamed out, but definitely the vibes are not as starry eyed as they used to be. So I guess identifying, do we feel like we've already identified players on our roster that we think are overvalued? Are there anyone that we think we really want to capitalize on? I think you've said Kyler, we've said RBs, we've said Hawkinson, sort of. Although I personally would want to wait till something some people brought up for me on Hawkinson is just wait for the Addison suspension. A couple games of higher targets, a little hype. And so I'd wait on Hawkinson if I am trying to rebuild until game two or something like that. See if he has a big week in the first couple, especially in a two tight end premium where he drops 30 points because he gets 10 receptions somehow, right? I mean, like it's different, right? Those numbers hit. But otherwise, I feel like we talked on a lot of this type of stuff. So, anything else we want to talk on in rebuilding? Otherwise, I think we're ready to talk about competing. You guys agree?
Yeah, I think pretty much sum it up by saying if start by trying to get your 26 first back. If you can't do it, then move on to this section.
All right. So, contending moves. David, if we're competing, talk about our roster construction and moves you're looking to make.
Yeah, I think from a roster construction point of view, the big things we already talked about a lot of the free moves you can make by trimming the fat at wide receiver. If you can move any of those guys for any sort of value, that's great. If you can move them for other guys that fit the roster construction better, that's great. Most of them, like we said, we're happy to cut. But I feel like we already talked about that enough. The big thing I want to focus on here is our lack of flexibility with draft picks. I don't think this team is a super team by any means. So you don't have the depth built in to not need picks. Like there's some teams you look at and you're like, oh, he doesn't have his 26 first. Who cares? That team doesn't need a 26 first this year. This team could use some picks for some flexibility in season. So I'm looking to tear down from a couple of players. I think either Kyler or Love, if you can tear down to like Dak or Goff. I know you mentioned Dak in your first for Murray or Love. If you can get that, that's great. I might even be willing to take just a second. Like maybe we need to bridge that gap a little bit.
On that, I wasn't thinking you could do Kyler or Love for Dak in the first. I was thinking if you did Kyler for Love or for Dak,
Right,
and
right, right.
you threw
That's
in
right.
like a JSN, we needed to make it a bigger
Yep.
deal on that. But
Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha. But yeah, something like that. Can I pick up a second? A decent second would be great, but probably any second gives me some flexibility. We've got so many stud wide receivers. Like, can I know it sucks to trade these young guys, but can we tear down from BTJ or Amon Ra to London and Nico and grab a second? One of those guys. Can we move maybe down to Lad and pick up a pick? You know, still staying with an elite core player, but just getting a little extra flexibility. I think those are the two places you really have the players that allow you to do that, quarterback and wide receiver. So if I'm competing, that's what I'm trying to do right now is maybe get a second or two, maybe an extra third or two, just something to give me some insurance in season.
Yeah, I think I've kind of highlighted some of the moves throughout where if I'm contending what I'm looking to do. I think something else you could be keeping your eye on is Jawan Jennings. I mean, he's your wide receiver 6 and start 10. It's not like you necessarily need him. So I think with Ayuk being out at the beginning of the year, if he has a pretty good start, if I can get a second for him, yeah, I building off what David said, I would just love to have an extra second or third because I mean, if you get someone like Zach Charbonnet down the stretch, if freaking Kenneth Walker, who I think is so good, if he can stay healthy, seems like he can't. But I think getting a guy like Charbonnet, like just for 5 weeks in the playoffs, that's huge for your team. That could honestly carry you to a championship, and just getting that second round pick could make that possible.
yeah, definitely lacking in flexibility for sure. I think we need to figure out running back. That's step number one. He asked earlier about hammer versus non-hammer. I said I'd talk more about it later, but I probably lead non-hammer. I'm just gonna go through on Dynasty Daddy real quick and just take a little bit of a look at just some things that pop right up to mind. Looking at G Nuts, frisky team, doesn't own his 27 first, but also doesn't have a very good team. He is right below you. You love to eliminate the number 7 team in starting value. Just say, hey, my dude, you got Kyron Williams and no other guaranteed starting running back. You have Rasheed Rice, who has all these potential issues. Can I move BTJ for those two guys? BTJ has a lot of value. Are you guys is that a move you're willing to make on this team potentially? Something like that to get that hammer running back, a wide receiver that could be elite. Is that too risky for you from a value perspective, David and JP?
I think that's the path we have to take. I I don't hate it. I might try and explore a few other options just because we don't know what Rice's suspension is going to be, and if we're trying to compete, we want him in our lineup. And if he misses the first 6 weeks, we can probably survive without him, and we're hoping for that. But what if they don't announce the suspension right away, and then he appeals, and then he's suspended for some playoff games? Like I don't know. I think that's great value, and I might pull the trigger on that. But I'm looking around a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get it when it's no longer great value. We're buying the risk, and I think that's even why you can get the deal done. JP, I'm going to throw one for you looking at the number 8 team again, trying to knock people out right below us. Would you be willing to move JSN? Let's see it. What if I was able to get, although it's old, it's risky, Aaron Jones, Woody Marks, and T. Higgins. Remember, we do have Mixon, so that makes Marks a more interesting type of player to target for me. Does that give us enough value as something that we'd consider doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's close. I mean, short term, T. Higgins, he could definitely score as many, if not more, points than JSN. I think he's drafted slightly higher. And that kind of fits with the roster construction more so what we're going for. We add some running back, get a little bit more flexibility there with even the upside guy and Woody Marks. So I think the value is relatively fair. And I think just based on this roster, it's probably a move I'd accept if it was on the table.
And looking at the number 19, David, this is just something I see right off the bat. Pick a name, DK Metcalf or Zay Flowers and Caleb Johnson. So one of those wide receivers and Caleb Johnson for JSN. I think it's viable, it's plausible, it's possible. Are you making that? Is that a split we'd consider?
That's it's not bad. It's not bad from the team you've got. I'd probably go Zay. I don't know if I want to pick up two Steelers. I don't love that offense. If it stinks and you invest highly in it, it's going to affect you. I do think DK has a good chance of being a smash this year, but I probably don't want to add two Steelers. I will say one thing Kyle mentioned was that the Expendables is a pretty active manager, loves to trade. He is number 2 overall, but I think there's a little wiggle room. He's got a deep running back room. He's got some guys that we've talked about, whether on or off air. He's got some other guys we've mentioned in some other deals. But I think looking at potentially tearing down from either JSN or Amon Ra to like Jameson Williams, I think we might be able to pick up like Derrick Henry and a pick, which kind of accomplishes 2 of our goals. It is a little bit of a jump if we're going all the way from Amon Ra to Jameson. I don't mind it though because they're on the same team, and if they end up being fairly close in points per game, like you're you're helping your starting lineup tremendously. But like that's quite a gamble. We're not Jameson Williams fans here. I'm coming around a little bit, but I still don't feel comfortable starting him all the time. I think if you can get it done for like Jason in a third, maybe like something like that, then that feels really good. But even Amon Ra, I'm willing to talk about that deal. How do you guys feel about that potentially?
JP?
JMO's tough. So it was Amon Ra for JMO and who?
Henry
Henry
in
in
a
a
second.
second.
I don't know if I'm quite there. I mean, it is kind of what the move I'm looking to make roster construction wise, but I just don't think the value's quite there. I think I'd be more so thinking of like a Malik Neighbors for London and Harvey. I think I'd or maybe BTJ for London and Harvey, something along those lines. Because I don't love Jamie. I think he's more like worth 1 first, and Amon Ra's closer to 3, especially in start 10. I really going with the value for the Hammers. But I mean, just looking at this team, I want their 27 first. I'll tell you that with James Conner, Henry, CMC, Devontae Adams, and Matthew Stafford as their QB2. That kind of jumps out, but we're talking about contending.
Yeah, I think if you were to place RJ Harvey, I'd feel a lot better on that. If I owned my 27 first, I'd be willing to make that move for Henry. It's just really hard. I mean, although Henry does have he's under contract for a few more years and he's a unicorn, but I think I'd feel a lot better getting a little bit younger than that. But the process and the values of the players are not a bad range. If you know you'd be able to move either Henry or Williams again, and you now have more liquid pieces and you got fair value and split it into movable stuff, then I think that's a good process deal. One last thing I saw, I just wanted to pull up. Moving in with the number 5 team right here, Ragnarok. I think if I remember correctly later on the show sheet, but I'm just jumping all over the place because it's the way I'm operating right now. You talked about Brees Hall and Josh Jacobs as possible targets. I don't mind going for Chuba Hubbard either potentially. I'd be very interested in seeing if I can buy low on Addison in one of those running backs. I'd be willing to go Amon-Ra St. Brown for Addison and Brees Hall or Jacobs if I could get that done. I think I'm willing to look at that. I'm considering it. Depending on if it's Jacobs, I might want to try to get a little bit something else back, like a pick swap, a second for a third, something like that. Is that something you guys are potentially interested in, or am I just looking to split assets a little bit too far down the line?
That's a little rough for me because I'm not a big Jordan Addison believer, and he's starting with a suspension. It's not a very long one, so that's not a huge thing. When I looked at this team, I kind of wanted to approach it from the other side. This guy's got Jordan Addison as his second receiver, Khalil Shakir as his third. He's not very deep at wide receiver. I know we don't exactly have a ton of assets to be combining, but I think in this case, if I can give any two of Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, Tank Bigsby, David Montgomery, Chris Godwin, or Jawan Jennings, like let him pick any two. I don't care which two. And if I can get Josh Jacobs or Brees Hall back, I might even add in a little bit more. But I think that helps your lineup tremendously, and you get to keep your stud young wide receiver core, which not to completely ignore it, which we have most of the time, but he did say he wants to build around that core, and we keep telling him to break it apart, which he might have to be fair. But this is a suggestion that doesn't require him breaking apart that beautiful young wide receiver core.
Yeah, I can't quite do the Addison for Jacobs in a second, even for like Amon Ra, just because I think he's closer to three first, and those guys are like two late first and a second. And I even see Addison valued a little after late first at times. But I mean, what do you guys think about even acquiring Genty? I don't know what the price would be because obviously the running backs were overdrafted, but I wouldn't hate going after Genty in this situation.
Can I move BTJ, Amon Ra, one of those guys essentially for him? Something like that. I think you might have to move BTJ. I'm not willing to move neighbors. I'm interested.
Add on a Jawan Jennings if you have to, honestly, or a Dallas Goddard, because I mean he does not have receivers, especially to start the year with Shakir's injury and Addison. He might take two wide receivers because his running backs maybe is ended up being better than he expected once he took Genty.
I mean, I think the only benefit of getting Genty, if I'm consolidating assets, is then so I can split him for a different running back and a first. Like, I don't think this team has the flexibility to do anything more than a straight up one for one wide receiver to RB personally, but you can go big hammer hunting. I would, and if the league values RBs and RB is actually more flexible and valuable than wide receiver, as long as there's a plan for it, I'm okay with it.
I do think there's one more team worth talking about a smidge. That's John Dude Man guy. He's the top, I believe, in starter rank. He's got a lot of running backs that we could discuss, and I think he could use a tier up at wide receiver realistically. So, again, looking at tearing down from JSN, Amon Ra, somewhere in that neighborhood. If you're going down to AJ Brown, if you're competing, you could probably add one of these running backs, Kenneth Walker, maybe, but probably not. I mean, I don't know. AJ Brown and Kenneth Walker for Amon Ra, or that'd be pretty good.
That'd be a
They're getting about the
smash.
same amount of points. I don't think they do it, but even Kamara, I'm happy with. And then if you're going Jason to Pearsall, you're going to need a little bit more, in my opinion. But I'm willing to consider Jason to Pearsall on the right deal as well.
Would you be willing to move if they're high on BTJ for that package of AJ Brown and Kenneth Walker? I'd be personally happy to do that. Yeah, it'd be tough. You might need to add something to it to get it done, honestly. I'd be happy to plug Tank Bigsby on that type of a deal. I'd be happy to plug, honestly, Joe Mixon just because of the risk on that type of the deal. But yeah, it's definitely there's a lot of ideas to float around. I feel like we floated a lot of ideas about potential trades around. It's not a bad team. It's not a good team. It's a mid team. We had an episode not too long ago this summer about what to do when you're mid, and I think we just had another one about it too, didn't we, David? Looks like we did.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think this was a good exercise because I think it presented a lot of problems that a lot of people face regularly.
And I just want to highlight one other thing. Just what a great name John Dude Man guy is. Like real MVP type of stuff.
I'm not your buddy, guy.
I'm not your John, dude. Anyways, anything you guys think we're really missing that we haven't touched on? We answered all of his questions. I think we talked in circles like we always do. Anything else you guys want to throw on?
Yeah, I think we're missing the important question. What do we do? Which direction are you trying to go? You trying to get your 26 and seeing what happens, or are you just going to try to compete? What are we doing? What's the final word?
I think I'm a price check my 26 first, but if the guy's trying to, you know, take me from around the ringer for that 26 first back, then I think I'm just going to go contend. That's the direction I'm going.
I think I just prefer to go contending, honestly. I have two quarterbacks that last year, first round, 1, 2 turn startup quarterbacks that I believe in both of them. I think they could both be QB1s. I'm not guaranteeing they will be, right? And I'm talking about 6 to 12 range, right? But 4 wide receivers that I think could be wide receiver ones. And my RB room's not terrible and a tight end, top 6-ish tight end. Like I know I don't have any depth, but I just find it hard to tear this down. If I even have to overpay a smidge for my first, I think I would rather just say, screw it. I'm top heavy, but really just try to grind the margins wherever I can. And I think I lead and compete, but I'm not overpaying and I'm not pushing any more chips in. Really, I'm trying to keep these picks for flexibility and do every little value gain to pick up any sort of future flexibility I can or liquidity.
Yeah, I think if the team that had our 26 and 27 first were swapped here, I would definitely want to go after my 26 first and try to rebuild. The fact that the guy who has our 26 first, there's not a whole lot of clear wins for us to get our 26 first back that I think he'd be interested in. I think I'm with JP here. Let's price check it. Let's see if we can get it. And if we can, then I'm trying to get rid of these old guys because I don't love the veterans on this team, but that's more of a player take than a process thing. So, like, I think, like you guys have said, I'm not going to overpay for my first. I'd love to get it back and maybe try and retool and aim for a championship window starting next year. But I don't think you're that far from being a real contender this year either. So, don't overpay for it and be ready to pivot. But I want that answer soon because I don't want this team to take off in a direction before I've chosen that direction.
Definitely agree on that part. If you're price checking, price check now. Get that answer. And if the answer is no, I don't know that I need to make any huge moves before week 1, but I do want to try to shore up the James Conner type of running back. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Down and Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Down and Construction Podcast, until next time.